Over the past week, Joe and I have heard from so many people, from political leaders to regular citizens, deeply dismayed by several of President-elect Trump's cabinet selections, and they are scared. Last Thursday, we expressed our own concerns on this broadcast and even said we would appreciate the opportunity to speak with the president-elect himself. On Friday, we were given the opportunity to do just that. Joe and I went to Mar-a-Lago to meet personally with President-elect Trump. It was the first time we have seen him in 7 years.
Now, we talked about a lot of issues, including abortion, mass deportation, threats of political retribution against political opponents, and media outlets. We talked about that a good bit. And it's going to come as no surprise to anybody who watches this show, has watched it over the past year or over the past decade, that we didn't see eye to eye on a lot of issues, and we told him so.
What we did agree on was to restart communications. My father often spoke with world leaders with whom he and the United States profoundly disagreed. That's a task shared by reporters and commentators alike. We had not spoken to President Trump since March of 2020, other than a personal call Joe made to Trump on the morning after the attempt on his life in Butler, Pennsylvania. In this meeting, President Trump was cheerful, he was upbeat, he seemed interested in finding common ground with Democrats on some of the most divisive issues. And for those asking why we would go speak to the president-elect during such fraught times, especially between us, I guess I would ask back, why wouldn't we? 5 years of political warfare has deeply divided Washington and the country. We have been as clear as we know how in expressing our deep concerns about President Trump's actions and words in the coarsening of public debate. But for nearly 80 million Americans, election denialism, public trials, and January 6th were not as important as the issues that moved them to send Donald Trump back to the White House with their vote. Joe and I realize it's time to do something different. And that starts with not only talking about Donald Trump, but also talking with him.
As somebody close to Donald Trump told me this past weekend, this is a president who's not seeking re-election. So maybe, just maybe, now could be the time for both parties to get to work. I know, given the jarring headlines that we read every day, that may seem like a stretch, but think about this. Of the 150 million votes cast, Donald Trump got 50%. Kamala Harris got about 49%. So I don't know. Seems to make sense for leaders of both parties to seek common ground, if it's possible at all. And I will tell you, a lot of Democratic leaders we've talked to this past week, since the election, have told Mika and me it's time for a new approach. And when I say top Democrats, I mean top Democrats. They said, we're open, and this was before we talked to Donald Trump. They said, listen, we're open to working with the incoming president if the incoming president is open to working with us.
Yeah, the question is, though, how do we get there? Hyperbole and personal attacks will not work. My hair on fire doesn't work. We've all seen that. What also does not work is threatening political opponents with arrest, harassment, and even jail. That is a failed path. Recent history has proven that impeachments and trials turn those on trial into political martyrs and only make them more popular with the American people. Just ask Bill Clinton and Donald Trump. We know this will be a consequential presidency. The question is whether it will be constructive. It will take a new approach from all sides, from both parties, and a leader who can bring them together. And only time will tell if Donald Trump is that leader. As for us, we also let him know that we will continue to speak truth to power and push back hard when called for, as we have with all presidents.
The meeting between President-elect Trump and the host of MSNBC's Morning Joe, a show often critical of Trump, raises profound questions about the role and future of legacy media in the public discourse. While the exchange might have been cordial, it also highlighted the widening gap between mainstream outlets and the American people, who have increasingly turned to alternative platforms for their information. The commentary surrounding this meeting puts the spotlight on a critical issue. Can the media regain credibility in an era of distrust? For years, many in the mainstream media painted Trump and his supporters with a broad brush, often implying and amplifying narratives that later proved misleading or outright false. Claims of impending doom, fears of concentration camps, and predictions of mass suppression under Trump were only hyperbolic but alienated millions of Americans who saw these narratives as detached from reality. To regain public trust, legacy media must take the difficult step of acknowledging their missteps. One, they need to admit falsehoods. The media must own up to the stories they got wrong, whether it was under Trump's policies, his supporters, or the broader political landscape. Number two, transparency. News organizations need to demonstrate more transparency in their reporting processes to show they are operating in good faith.
So I think we need to keep that in mind, those two things. We're in the news business and we're in the truth business.
And number three, neutrality over advocacy. Media outlets that once championed themselves as neutral arbiters of truth must decide whether they are in the business of journalism or activism. The rise of alternative media is here to stay. The public's migration to alternative media platforms such as X or TikTok has been driven by a hunger for perspectives unfiltered by the biases of the traditional outlets. Social media, podcasts, and independent commentators have filled this void, providing real-time analysis and diverse viewpoints. Unlike the centralized power of legacy media, these platforms thrive on community engagement, fully organic, and direct access to information. Trump's presidency, and now his status as president-elect again, symbolizes a broader rejection of elite-driven narratives. People no longer rely solely on MSNBC, CNN, or the New York Times to shape their understanding of current events. This decentralized media landscape is here to stay. Now, what's funny is the left's fear-based narrative is falling apart. Those on the left who perpetuated extreme predictions under Trump's previous administration, such as claims of authoritarian crackdowns or the establishment of concentration camps, have lost credibility themselves. These predictions never materialized, and the exaggerations have backfired, reducing their ability to critique Trump's policies effectively in the future. As the commentary suggests, many Americans now look at these exaggerated fears and laugh, seeing them as both alarmist and out of touch. This further weakens the ability of the left to even mount serious opposition to Trump's agenda. Now, moving forward, where do we go from here? President-elect Trump's meeting with Morning Joe host could mark the beginning of a renewed conversation about media accountability. However, the fundamental question remains, will legacy media adapt and rebuild trust, or will they continue to spiral out of control and irrelevance? Americans are seeking alternative sources of truth. The ball is in their court, but without humility and accountability, the chances of recovery are slim. Meanwhile, Trump's populist approach and his connection to the public through alternative platforms such as X and TikTok will continue to dominate the national conversations, and the legacy media will be left to burn. You know what to do? Subscribe, share this video. Till next time, stay positive. Peace.